Hello folks, and welcome back to our coverage of the Vancouver Regional Championships VGC edition. We're back at the other streamed top 8 matchup. We are getting pretty close to the grand finals, which will be uploaded on the Sunday after this video is released, hopefully in time for us to start our immediate coverage of Stockholm Regional Championships. And apologies, I am a little bit ill, so if I'm a little bit off today, apologies there. We're going to go ahead and get into this top 8 game. We got some pretty exciting stuff here. We have Giovanni Cischke, who we saw in the top round 10 getting the win and in, now making it to this top 8 match versus Behzad Muntazir. And this is a Pokemon that we have not seen yet on stream, or at least be really successful yet in this regulation as a whole, and that is Lunala. Terra Water, Shadow Shield, a phenomenal ability, very similar to Multiscale, and this is a Power Herb Lunala with Moongeist Beam, Meteor Beam, Expanding Force, and Trick Room. Ogerpon Hearthflame Mask is the Ogerpon of choice here. Full, pretty much it's full attack mode with the redirection. Ivy Cudgel, Woodhammer, Follow Me, and Spiky Shield. Landorus Incarnate, a very powerful Pokemon we've been seeing quite a bit of recently with that Terra Poison, Life Orb, and Sheer Force. Life Orb and Sheer Force, love that interaction. Earth Power, Sludge Bomb, Stand Seer Storm, and Protect. Life Orb and that Sheer Force combo to give a lot more additional damage to these moves without the recoil. Indeedee Female is the redirector here, additional redirector, I guess. Follow Me, Trick Room, Helping Hand, and Alluring Voice, an incredibly interesting move. Doesn't do a lot of damage, but I believe it lowers a stat if it got raised this turn, something like that. I'll have to check. Rocky Helmet is the item here. Roaring Moon with the booster energy. This is something we've been seeing a lot more of with Photosynthesis, allowing it to get super speedy. Acrobatics, Knockoff, Tailwind, and Protect with that Terra Flying. A really powerful Pokemon. You're I think one of the only Tailwind setters that is not a priority Tailwind Trick Room setter, which comes in pretty big. And then Urshifu Rapid Strike with that Terra Stellar. Hold on, we saw that it had Taunt. That's the big thing. It's pretty important here to take note of. Now, on the other side of things, Giovanni Cischke, we have seen this team already, and it's a pretty fun one. Raging Bolt with the Assault Vest. The Volt Switch is a switching move here. Otherwise, it's a pretty standard move set for Raging Bolt. Fluttermane is the Terra Fairy. No Ghost-type moves here. Moonblast, Icy Wind, Sunny Day, and Protect. Ogerpon Cornerstone Mask here, again, quite popular. Very similar moveset, but this is Power Whip. Ivy Cudgel, Follow Me, and Spiky Shield. Chi-Yu with the Terra Water and Covert Cloak, Snarl, Heat Wave, Overheat, and Taunt. Taunt is the kind of standout move here for Chi-Yu, and I think most teams having access to Taunt is pretty important. And then Koraidon rounds things out here. Clear Amulet, Terra Fire, Collision Course, Flare Blitz, Flame Torch, and Protect. Not that Life Orb close combat build that we saw when EUIC, but the big interactions here that are super exciting is Fluttermane and Chi-Yu being on the field at the same time, with Fluttermane being able to set Sunny Day is huge. You have Koraidon to set the sun as well, but if you're up against potential other weather setters, Fluttermane being able to be on the field at the same time as Koraidon is still very threatening. You can still Sunny Day. You can also click Moonblast or Icy Wind. This Fluttermane has a lot of fun stuff that it can do. Raging Bolt and Fluttermane both love taking advantage of the sun with their Photosynthesis. Chi-Yu loves taking advantage of the sun and just being able to do some insane damage. And then Ditto rounding things out here with that Focus Sash and Terra Ghost. It loves to be able to switch into another very powerful Pokemon, but a lot of times it can be really useful as another support Pokemon alongside something like the Koraidon, where you're getting a lot of damage out. So, that's something to keep an eye on for Giovanni. Where do you want to bring Ditto in? Do you even want to bring Ditto to this matchup potentially? It's a lot of times when you have these more off-the-wall games, more off-the-wall teams that you're playing up against, you do get to see their team sheet. You get to see exactly what you're getting with Ditto. But when stuff like, Lunala and Indeedee are coming out here with the Expanding Force right off the bat, bringing Ditto in when it's not as, lockstep with the rest of your team doesn't feel as good here. But this is a very powerful duo for Behzad. And for Giovanni, you have the Fluttermane and the Ogerpon, but now this is something where it feels like for Giovanni, it feels like the potential to just get Helping Hand Expanding Forced is pretty scary, quite frankly. You do also have to deal with both Pokemon being able to potentially set up Trick Room. You do also have to deal with the potential Meteor Beam that can come out from the new Lunala. All of those things are incredibly threatening. You don't necessarily have to worry too much, I think, about either Pokemon going down this turn. Even with Expanding Force, you do have Sturdy on the Ogerpon, even if it would take a ton of damage, and Fluttermane is incredibly bulky on the special side. especially with it not being as offensive in terms of move pool. I would imagine that Fluttermane's a little bit bulkier, but we do see Giovanni want to go ahead and switch things out here. Chi-Yu is what comes in its place. Chi-Yu, a great switch into a potential expanding force if that is what you're going up against. And the Beads of Ruin is actually, oh man, that's one of those things where Chi-Yu kind of makes its teammate a little bit weaker against the strategy. You see the Ivy Cudgel come into the Indeedee there, give a good chunk of damage, but we see the Trick Room come out for the Lunala now. Chi-Yu under quite a bit of threat here from a potential Meteor Beam, although it does have some options to work around that. For the Ogerpon here, if you get the chance to break Shadow Shield, that's pretty big. Whenever you can break Shadow Shield for Giovanni, then you're in a pretty good spot, or at least you're in a better spot. There's not a lot of ways for Behzad to restore the Shadow Shield. A lot of times we see people, when there is a Shadow Shield or a multi-scale type ability like Terra Shell that Terapagos has, a lot of the gameplay comes around to trying to, re-up that ability, try to get as much use out of that as possible. So a lot of times we see stuff like Rillaboom and leftovers on those Pokemon, but that is not the case here at Fort Behzad. So Lunala likely the fastest thing on the field now, and we see the Terastallization coming through. Lunala is quite threatened by Chi-Yu here, even though it is just Snarl and it could potentially miss. It does not want to have to take that. We do see the Terastallization come out for the Lunala, going for that Terra Water. That does make it a little bit more prone to potential Power Whip moves from the Ogerpon here, but it does make it much more resistant to basically everything else. Ogerpon goes for the Follow Me. That could mean the move that this is a Meteor Beam going into that slot. That's exactly what it is. The Chi-Yu, under quite a bit of a threat there. So this is going to be a +1 to the Lunala. It does get that Power Herb boost, meaning it's going to get some damage out. I don't know if this is going to be enough to take out the Ogerpon, but at the very least, it's going to break Sturdy, which is going to be pretty big going into the later stages of this game. Wow! It does indeed take it down to, it does break the Sturdy. That's pretty big. It does break the Sturdy. That does drop Indeedee, and it does break the Shadow Shield for Lunala, setting it back to its base stats. But now this Ogerpon will go down to an Expanding Force. Notably, the Psychic Terrain only has a couple more turns if Behzad does want to start clicking that Expanding Force, which Chi-Yu, it feels perfectly fine against. But now the Chi-Yu does have to face off against the Landorus. This isn't a Choice Scarf Chi-Yu, so again, we aren't going to know the exact speeds on these Pokemon. And Landorus is also very speedy. It's usually max speed. I wouldn't be surprised if Landorus outspeeds the Chi-Yu. Wouldn't be shocked either way, quite frankly. So, or especially since we're under Trick Room. I could see the Chi-Yu moving first, and getting a Snarl off would be pretty big. But I think if you're Giovanni, you probably want this Chi-Yu to be max speed. It's not a very bulky Pokemon. I'd be shocked if we had any bulk trained into it. So Expanding Force here, a pretty clear threat for Behzad. A good choice to start throwing things out here for Giovanni. I don't know if you want to leave this Ogerpon in. It becomes a question of how important is the redirection when you're up against spread moves like Expanding Force and Sandseer Storms. But we do see Giovanni, for the very least, want to keep Ogerpon alive for now. So Spiky Shield comes through, as does Expanding Force. It doesn't do anything into the Protect. It's going to do nothing to the Chi-Yu, as it is immune thanks to that Dark typing. But Landorus does outspeed and Trick Room, aka Landorus is slower than the Chi-Yu. Could come into play in the next few games, but the Chi-Yu goes down to an Earth Power. Now Giovanni down a Pokemon as well. Both players at 3 and 3, but Ogerpon is at 1 HP. Lunala, Shadow Shield is broken, but is still feeling quite good. And Landorus now on the battlefield. Giovanni has his work cut out for him. Notably, Fluttermane is not going to have a speed boost from the booster energy. This could be a potential path for Giovanni here. Bring the Fluttermane in, click an Icy Wind. The Landorus cannot Terra away from it, but it can protect. And that does put you under threat from a potential Moongeist Beam from Lunala, or another Expanding Force, quite frankly. So what is the fourth Pokemon for Giovanni is my question. Gio is really thinking this one through. I don't know if you brought Ditto here. Is Ditto it? And we see the Koraidon is the one that comes out here. Koraidon, weak to Expanding Force, but can Terra away from it into Terra Fire. That said, that does leave it vulnerable to Earth Power. That is not something that you want to have to deal with. It's kind of a pinch right now. Ogerpon as well can't Spiky Shield, so this feels for Behzad like a really good spot to go for Expanding Force plus Earth Power. Either way, you're going to be getting super effective damage, pretty much guaranteed into the Koraidon, unless it goes for a Protect. Ogerpon can go for a Spiky Shield again, or can switch out, I guess. This feels like a really tough spot for Giovanni. This Lunala really feeling very, very oppressive, especially with that Indeedee. I mean, the Lunala Indeedee combo just felt incredibly good. And then Landorus underspeeding the Chi-Yu, allowing it to outspeed in Trick Room, giving Behzad just a really, really clear path to victory. Fluttermane comes in now. It is going to get a speed boost from the booster energy. I don't know if that is ideal. Fluttermane very well might just go down here. Koraidon does go for Protect. This is going to result in Ogerpon and Koraidon being on the field with Trick Room down, which could be pretty big. Expanding Force coming through here, or well, we don't know that Expanding Force KOs Fluttermane. I wouldn't be surprised if it KOs Fluttermane. It doesn't. It takes it down to a little bit under half, but double up into that spot here. Behzad making a pretty bold read that Koraidon was going for a Protect. That's one of those things where, like, when you know you have a pin on a Pokemon, right? Like, this Koraidon could switch out into a Fluttermane, sure, but then you're guaranteed to KO an Ogerpon and get a ton of damage onto the Koraidon, and then Koraidon remains pinned on the next turn. So, Behzad still in the exact same spot as the previous turn, can just go for Expanding Force plus Earth Power if he wants to. Can make some more defensive plays here. This is a really tough spot for Geo. You can potentially go for the Follow Me Collision course, I think would be the play. I don't know if you Terrastalize. That's the big question, right? Do you Terrastalize here for Geo? Like, are you anticipating that? Because if you do, then you're in a tough spot either way. And Koraidon just goes for the Protect. It fails. Spiky Shield comes out for the Ogerpon, trying to outlast this Psychic Terrain, but it's just not going to work. The double Protect here not coming through. This should take down the Koraidon. I fully anticipate that this takes down Koraidon with the super effective damage. Yes, it does indeed. Leaves Cornerstone Ogerpon left in a 1v3 that it certainly cannot win. So, game number 1 going pretty convincingly to Behzad Muntazir here. That is a very, very dominant showing from this Lunala team. A surprising amount of damage, and Geo just was not able to deal with it. Now, Geo's Ogerpon did move first here. That might be a speed tie thing, or you could be the faster Ogerpon. I'd be a little bit shocked if that is the case, but it does, notably, the Ivy Cudgel does not KO for Giovanni. Now, coming into game number 2 here, I feel like if you are Behzad leading Lunala in DD, that is it's not that you're trying to condition your opponent into thinking that that's what you're going to lead, but that is a very clear mode, right? Super synergistic mode. You have Expanding Force, you have Helping Hand. It feels really, really good. You have some pretty efficient and clear-cut things that you can do with that mode. Going into this next game, you very well could see the combination of Roaring Moon and Urshifu or Roaring Moon and Landorus on the field going for a Tailwind mode. This is one of the things that we saw win San Antonio Regional Championships under Justin Tang and Shiliang Tang getting into the finals as well, was the ability to have a slower Trick Room mode that played a little bit less pacey, that was a little bit more about pivoting. In this case, the Trick Room mode is still can still do a lot of damage, can still be really aggressive with a combination of Meteor Beam and Expanding Force, but also having that Tailwind mode where you're much more focused on out-tempoing your opponent and properly outpacing, less on getting Trick Room set up to do the same, but you just get to click the go buttons. We could still very well see that, and for Geo, having to anticipate that, having to play against those two modes, or the ability for Behzad to not even have to click those, that's really difficult. That's really, really difficult to adapt to. And I'm interested to see if Geo can make that happen in game number 2 here. We do see, is this a little bit of a chance? I don't remember. I'll be honest. This illness is making my memory foggy. But I believe we see the exact same leads here. This is Cornerstone Ogerpon and Fluttermane for Geo, and Lunala and Indeedee once again for Behzad. If you are Geo, do you think that the Fluttermane switching out was a mistake in the first game? Do you think you need to see Icy Wind? Do you think we need to see Moon Blasts here? Do we need to see a Sunny Day? Potentially, I doubt it would be a Sunny Day move here. The Ogerpon can still go for Spiky Shield here. We know that both Expanding Force and Meteor Beam are probably going to do a lot into it. We know Meteor Beam, Helping Hand, puts it down to its Focus Sash. At the very least, again, losing that Sturdy is pretty tough, but if you can make a big play happen, some sort of Ivy Cudgel Moonblast play into the Lunala maybe, or maybe trying to take out the Indeedee right off the rip. That Helping Hand was pretty big in the previous games. That could be a big thing. Maybe there's a world where you get an early sacrifice off, an early 1-for-1. But we saw that this Psychic Terrain lasted the rest of the game in the previous game, and so if you're Geo, there's maybe a world where you want to stall things out. We do see the Moonblast into the Indeedee, takes it down a little bit above half. The special attack drop might matter, but we see the Ivy Cudgel come out. I'm interested if you... Wow, the Indeedee survives on 4 HP. That is incredible. If you're Behzad, that is... quite frankly, best case scenario, you can just click the exact same moves again for Geo. That hurts so much. I think there's a world where if you take the Indeedee down, obviously the Lunala is still getting that much damage out onto you, but then you at least have the Indeedee down. You might, depending on what is in the back for Behzad, you then might have the opportunity to break the Shadow Shield and get some additional damage into the Lunala, but that is simply not going to be the case here. I think if you are Geo, you might just need to go for Spiky Shield on the Ogerpon and Moonblast with the Fluttermane into the Indeedee. That could be your best course of action. Maybe sacrifice the Fluttermane. You could go for Protect on the Fluttermane instead, but I don't know. Ogerpon feels like it might be a win condition with that Follow Me if you can outlast the Psychic Terrain. Ogerpon does just get withdrawn. It is not going down on this turn. Giovanni guaranteeing that. Chiyu coming in, that is going to be unaffected by the Expanding Force. A relatively good call here. And we could see Fluttermane go for Sunny Day. It is just going to go for the Protect. So Giovanni is going to keep both these Pokemon alive and well on the field here. Expanding Force isn't going to do anything from this Lunala if that is the button that gets clicked. And indeed he goes for Follow Me here. However, on this next turn, it's Trick Room instead. It's Trick Room instead. Behzad making an incredibly intelligent call there. Knowing that Giovanni is going to want to try to preserve some Pokemon here. That Lunala's not going down either way. So the Trick Room going up now means Behzad has a massive advantage if it wasn't already leaning in his favor. Now, Chiyu is under major threat from this Meteor Beam. It obviously can Terrasilize into Terra Water here, but we saw Meteor Beam still did a lot into the Ogerpon. Expanding Force is still a pretty clear move for Behzad, as this Chiyu, again, if Geo doesn't Terrasilize it, Meteor Beam would simply take it out. Geo has to make a pretty tough call here. Is it going to be Meteor Beam or is it going to be another Expanding Force? Helping an Expanding Force would take down both of your Pokemon if you Terrasilize the Chiyu. If you don't go for the Terrasalization and you go for a Snarl instead, that could make this Lunala's life a lot more difficult. So, what are we going to see? We see the Terrasalization coming out for Behzad here. I think that means Geo probably is not going to be Terrasalizing on this turn. Lunala going for that Terra Water here. Again, making it incredibly more bulky opposed to that Snarl. Although, again, a special attack drop could be great. That said, it also makes sure that this resists an overheat or anything along those lines. An Alluring Voice goes into the Chiyu. Expanding Force comes out now, but Chiyu did not Terrasilize. It's a very good call from Geo there, risking the potential Meteor Beam. So, Chiyu now, likely, I would imagine that this is a Snarl potentially. It is a Heat Wave instead. Is it going to miss? It misses the Indeedee, so Indeedee still stays alive. This is brutal. It's a critical hit on the Lunala. The burn here might be relevant, although I'm not certain. It is a special attacker, so it's not going to cut Lunala's attack down. So now for Giovanni, you've lost your Fluttermane, but the Indeedee is still on the field. I think, oh man, that is a rough call. That is a rough call. Heat Wave math-wise does more damage, but the question is that enough? Like, is Snarl the better move there to drop the Lunala's special attack? Again, and missing on the Indeedee, I don't know in this instance if you want the Indeedee in or out if you are Geo. Because you're almost in a world where the Indeedee can go for Follow Me, but you have the spread damage with the Chiyu. This is a tough, like, again, Geo is in a really tough spot. Geo has to make another good call again. Is it going to be Expanding Force or Meteor Beam? And it's like that is every single turn. That is going to be a call that Geo is going to have to make. Indeedee can still go for Follow Me. It's going to guarantee that Ogerpon likely can't attack. Well, not guarantee necessarily. Ogerpon, I think, might be faster than the Chiyu. I don't remember if we saw that in the previous game. If Ogerpon is faster than the Chiyu in base speed, then that might be a problem. But if Chiyu can go, oh God, this Covert Cloak is big for Chiyu. If Chiyu can get off an overheat, maybe. I think Snarl is just your best bet, though. When you see Ogerpon go for the Spiky Shield here, it's not going to be taking any additional damage on this turn. The Chiyu can also go for Protect. I think that'd be interesting, but indeed he just goes for Follow Me. Chiyu does not go for Protector. Actually, Chiyu doesn't have Protect. I don't know what I'm talking about. It has Taunt. We've been talking about that. And the Meteor Beam comes out now. So Geo not able to make the call here. I'm certain that this is going into the Chiyu. If you are Behzad, we see the Power Herb boost the Lunala, allow it to get that attack off in one turn. Meteor Beam comes through onto the Chiyu. It should take it out in one shot. It does indeed. It's now a low Ogerpon, plus what I imagine is a Koraidon in the back for Giovanni. Psychic Terrain is still going to be up for a couple more turns, and Behzad has just not had to do anything else here. This Indeedee has survived through thick and thin. Ditto is what comes out actually for Giovanni. Gets a Lunala of his own, but it's not going to be quite as bulky. It should have that Shadow Shield ability, which is going to make sure it's not going to be able to take quite as much damage. And notably, Giovanni has not Terrasalized yet, so we could see potential Terrasalization into a Moongeist Beam, which would be, again, relatively interesting. But I think this Ditto is almost certainly faster than Behzad's Lunala, and so then you're still having to deal with the potential Indeedee Follow Me. I think if you're Geo here, this game is incredibly far out of reach. You'd have to be relying on some amazing mistakes from Behzad here. Ogerpon Spiky Shield fails. It's going to be going down to a potential Expanding Force this turn. Instead, it just goes down to the Alluring Voice from the Indeedee, taking it out relatively cleanly. And with this Trick Room still being up, we see Behzad get to go for that Moongeist Beam. This is a +1 special attack, and this is going to be super effective here. And it takes the Ditto down to the Focus Sash, but with that, we could see the Expanding Force for Giovanni here. It is going to finally take down that Indeedee. The Lunala goes down as well, which is pretty big. So, hey, you know, Giovanni, at the end of it, finally gets to KO both the Indeedee and the Lunala, takes them down, but has to deal with 2 Pokemon in the back. Psychic Terrain is still going to be up for, I believe, 1 or 2 more turns. Never mind. That is honestly, for Giovanni, that's the worst case scenario. With Psychic Terrain disappearing now, that is the game under wraps for Behzad. Landorus and Ogerpon both on the field now, should be able to do more than enough to this Lunala down at 1 HP. So, Trick Room is up for 1 more turn. If you are Behzad, in theory, it might be most optimal to go for double protects here, but this Lunala cannot KO both of your Pokemon at the same time, and so we do see the Terastallization coming out for Giovanni because, hey, why not, right? Why not? You might as well. It got close there at the end, but Behzad Muntazir, with a pretty dominant showing from this Lunala squad, is going to be able to make it into the top 4. I'm sorry, this Ditto's Terror Ghost. And Lunala is still moving first. Let's see, how much damage does this do, and where does this go? I'm interested to see. Into the Ogerpon, and it does KO it. It does KO it. There is a world. There's a world where 1 turn sooner Giovanni might have taken this game, but alas, it is not to be. Behzad Muntazir moving on to the top 4 with Lunala. That was a very fun game. That was a very fun game. Both players seem to be enjoying it as well, but Behzad Muntazir, that Indeedee surviving on just a fraction of its HP, able to get out some Alluring Voices, additional Follow Me's. That puts a lot of pressure on Giovanni. It didn't necessarily, the Indeedee didn't necessarily put in a ton of work necessarily after it stayed alive. I think also if you're Behzad, you wouldn't have minded the Indeedee necessarily going down so you get a free switch in. But Indeedee just surviving there, allowing it to keep pressing Helping Hand, keep pressing Follow Me. That is just extremely difficult to deal with if you are Geo, alongside that Lunala that's just kind of hard to kill, and did a surprising amount of damage as well. So we'll be looking at the top 4 matches tomorrow, and until next time, be safe, be smart, make wise decisions, and farewell.